Croeso chi gyd, fy enw i yw Iestyn Davies ac mae'n bleser i gyflwyno y gwefannau yma i chi. Yn anffodus, rydyn ni dal i gyfarfod dros rŵm, ond mae yna groeso cynnes i chi gyd. Welcome to you all and to this latest webinar presented by ColegauCymru. In this event, we're looking at the link between culture, change, and celebrating and embracing diversity as we work together to progress the anti-racist agenda across FE in Wales. Nawr, yn ystod y digwyddiad wythil yma, bydd ein panel yn cyflwyno yn iaith ei dewis ac felly ni fydd cyfeithiad ar y pryd, ond mae yna groeso chi gyflwyno cwestiynau i ni gyd yn y Gymraeg. You're welcome to raise questions by the chat function, please, in the Zoom, and the material presented by the Black FE Leadership Group will be available on request from them following this event. Felly, cyn bod amser yn ein trechu, before time evades us, can I please introduce Robin Landman, who will present to us the findings of the Black FE Leadership Group research. Diolch yn fawr, Robin.
Good morning, everybody. Next slide when you're ready, Maxine. Colleagues, you can see from the title slide that this is about the anti-racist Wales commitment, and this is our collective view, the joint view of ColegauCymru and Black FE Leadership Group about the ambition and contribution that FE can offer to realising that ambition. And you can see from this slide that we have a shared vision of the future. We have overlapping ambitions. Ours is all about an anti-racist culture at the core of FE and in its life and work, and the eradication of racism in further education. You can see also that at the foot of the slide, we use the term Black as an inclusive definition for all those who have a lived experience of the effects of racism. So we have an inclusive definition. All are welcome if they self-define in that way. And what really is exciting for us in the Black FE Leadership Group, not only that we have a partnership with ColegauCymru, but we also have the unequivocal commitment from the Welsh Government to achieve a Wales that is anti-racist by 2030. It's really almost an unprecedented ambition in England for us originally from an English context. And that's why we're so particularly delighted, not only at the welcome that we've had from ColegauCymru, but the fact that we're working to a purpose with a progressive government. And we see there from the purpose of the Welsh ambition to make a meaningful and measurable change to the lives of Black, Asian and minority ethnic people by tackling racism. We really welcome that forthrightness. And we also value, we really value the underpinning values that have been expressed. And we always start, colleagues, from a positive place. We always want to make sure that the Black dividend, as we call it in the UK, is seen as a positive contribution to the wealth of the nation, the nations, and also what the potential could be if the whole talent pool was properly utilised and valued. And you can see that from the bottom left-hand bullet point that currently in the UK as a whole, 20% of those who are 24 or under are Black or minority ethnic. And by 2051, that will be 1 in 3. So a huge pool of talent and potential that we really do have to exploit to its maximum for the benefit of all of us. And we start from the baseline that we understand, we recognise, and I think this is common for us, for ColegauCymru and for the Welsh Government, that we need to do better on data. But currently you can see from this graph that that 6% of the population And interestingly enough, 8.5% of the school-age population are from Black communities. And this heat map shows the density and diversity of Black populations in the UK currently. That's the 2016 heat map on the left. And you can see the source of this information is the University of Leeds. On the right-hand side, you can see a forward projection to 2061, which shows a wider dispersal and greater density in places which are hitherto non-diverse in ethnic terms. And this graph shows that the growth rate for the future, so the population in Wales will grow by 2.7% at the end of this decade. And that growth is likely to come from Black communities, which are growing at a faster rate than the host community. This chart shows that participation in further education by Black learners is high. So relatively speaking, although it's a small population, the proportion of Black students in FE is a high percentage relative to the population scale. And that's a common factor across the whole of the UK. And again, we have this interesting chart which shows that young people's performance in Wales. You can see here that we have the white population's attainment levels at 0, the dotted grey line. And you can see that most minority ethnic communities perform better than the host communities up to level 2, to GCSEs. At that point, we have a problem because the data isn't available. So that's an area that we have to collectively work on to make sure that we can track attainment beyond age 16. And you can see here young people's performance in Wales across GCSE and A level. But we also have a gap for level 3 vocational qualifications. So this really reiterates the previous slide. It shows that in terms of performance, young Black people are outperforming their white peers up to A level. But we have to find the data for vocational qualifications. And in terms of participation in apprenticeships in Wales, again, this is a common factor across the UK. We see there's a serious deficit in terms of representation in apprenticeships. Now, what we believe in the Black FE Leadership Group is this is a combination of gatekeeping by institutions and, more worryingly, by employers. And this is something that we have to grapple with across the UK, but obviously our priority today is for Wales. And in terms of attainment, you can see here success rates in apprenticeships for 2018 to 19. You can see there that this is further exemplified by this chart, which shows that with the exception of Asian communities, Black, African students and mixed students are attaining at a far lower rate than they should be. And here we have a slide showing the level of qualification held by adults of working age in 2018. You can see there that lower proportions of Black adults have qualifications at level 2 and 3, but higher at level 4, which is an anomaly we have to better understand, I think, because obviously it seems to be that once you get to level 4, Black students or Black participants have a tendency to outperform. But we have to explain what's happening at level 2 and 3. And here, again, a common factor across the United Kingdom is a graph showing that employment rates are far higher for white populations than black. So we can see on the left-hand side that although black employees have a higher ambition to progress, they earn less, 7% less per hour on average than their white counterparts. And we can also see that millennials from black backgrounds are more likely to be in unstable jobs. So 0 hours contracts are very highly represented, and 10% chance of having second jobs. So basically in unsustainable employment. And in terms of the progress that we have to make, one thing is clear is that the underrepresentation of teachers in schools is a really serious issue. You can see there that the current population, the cohort of black learners in Welsh schools is 12%, and yet you can see there that only 0.2% of head teachers or executive head teachers are from minority ethnic communities, and none from African or Caribbean communities, and only 15 black senior leaders in schools, heads, deputies, and assistant heads are from black communities. And this has a real impact, not only on black students, in the absence of role models, but also on white students who don't see people of color in positions of authority, and that diminishes their view of what the contribution of black people is. And in terms of community and belonging, it's important that people feel they belong in Welsh society. And this slide shows that there's lots of work to do on this front, because only 1% of teachers are from black communities. There's underrepresentation across the board in terms of Welsh government, judiciary, public appointments, and at a board level. We also know that black people are overrepresented in low-paid jobs, and there are increasing rates of hate crime which have been recorded. And we have a whole raft of things that there's serious work to be done, but where there's a will, there's a way, and we know that the will is there from the Welsh government. And this is an extract from the YMCA Young and Black report, which came out in October last year. And you can see we've extracted from that report 3 issues which we think are germane to our discussions this morning. That young black people across the UK hear racist language or witness racism in schools. 50% of young black people believe that their teachers' perceptions of them present a major barrier to their success. And 86% of young black people have heard or witnessed racist language in the workplace. Now, this slide is representative of our contention that having a representative workforce, not only in schools, but in further education and higher education, is a key plank in achieving the ambition of the Welsh government. And the one quote that I would pick from this American research, which has been quoted here, is the one at the top right-hand side of the slide. White students have even one black teacher, hold black people in greater esteem as a result. And at this point, colleagues, I'd like to introduce Guy Lacey, Chair of ColegauCymru, to take us on.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much, Robin. Can I start by first of all saying what a pleasure it is to have been able to work with colleagues from BFELG. In October of this year, ColegauCymru committed to helping to drive the anti-racism agenda in Wales forward, and we established our official partnership with the BFELG. Collectively, we want to bring the agenda of anti-racism to the forefront of further education in Wales, and we want to help and support the Welsh Government in delivering its ambition to make Wales an anti-racist society by 2030. But we believe that at the heart of this, in terms of helping colleges to deliver to this agenda, and to take this agenda forward is working with the BFELG and specifically looking at the 10-point action plan that they have devised. So ColegauCymru is enormously pleased to see the Welsh Government's Race Equality Action Plan and its commitments, and it fully supports the ambitions that have been laid out in that plan of making Wales an anti-racist nation. We believe that education, specifically further education, has got an absolutely key part to play. It's an important function of a society to have education, and to have education that has at its heart commitments to make a nation anti-racist. So in partnership with the BFELG, we've developed a set of shared priorities, and those shared priorities are going to underpin the work that we plan to do together in the future. And so briefly, those priorities are to work with the Welsh Government and support the Welsh Government in its key aim of delivering an anti-racist society in Wales by 2030. Secondly, as Robin flagged up in the presentation, data is incomplete and we need more information. So our second priority is to work with the Welsh Government and with other relevant bodies to ensure that we do have comprehensive student and workforce data so that we can monitor progress. Thirdly, ColegauCymru and BFLG will encourage all colleges to develop their own anti-racism action plans and enable them and support them in building their capacity in implementing these. Fourthly, we believe that we need to extend the commitment to deliver an anti-racist curriculum in post-compulsory education. And fifthly, we need to help change the FE workforce, and that's changing the FE workforce at all levels so that it becomes more diverse. And I think that was a theme which Robin highlighted in the presentation as an absolutely key area for action. And finally, our priority to encourage Estin to make anti-racism a central concern of their activities when they review things within our sector, within the FE sector. So we believe that in partnership, we can make Wales a better nation, and we believe that these priorities are a clear commitment to focus our work as we move forward. At that point, I'm going to hand back to Iestyn. Thank you, Iestyn.
Wel, diolch yn fawr, Guy. Mewn eiliad, byddwn ni'n cael ei munud gan y gweinidog, ond cyn hynny, falle mae yna gyfle i ni just mynd nôl at y data a'r cyflwyniad. Guy, thanks ever so much for that. In a moment, of course, we'll be joined by Jane Hutt, the Minister for the responsibility for this area in the Welsh Government. But while we wait for her to join us, I wonder if there's a chance, just Robin and Guy, to think through some of the data that you've presented us. And Robin, if I may, if I can come to you first, how similar, if you like, is the picture we see in Wales around the profile of our community compared to other regions of the UK and obviously regions of England in particular? And hi, Robin, if you could put your mic on, that'd be great as well. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's an interesting phenomenon because we have noticed a pattern in representation across the four nations. What we find is that in terms of engagement with education, certainly in post-compulsory education, that Black communities are always double their percentage in the population. So for example, in England, 15% at the last census translates to 30% in further education, and we can see a similar pattern in Wales and Scotland. So this is not an issue about hard to reach communities. There's a clear shared view across all visible minority ethnic communities that education is the key to a more prosperous life. What the current challenge is that that's not being translated into their talents being recognized in apprenticeships, and more importantly in the careers that should their talent should enable them to aspire to.
Okay, thank you, Robin. The picture seems to be obviously that there are some differences, but there's definitely some common themes here amongst the various parts of the UK. Guy, we've seen here in the presentation the importance of data. At a college level, thinking of Coleg Grant, but more widely over the sector, do we do enough, do you think, to establish a data picture locally, or perhaps are we too reliant on maybe some of the data that's collected currently by the EWC in regards to the workforce as a whole, do you think?
I think the short answer to that, yes, is we're not doing enough at the moment in order to really understand the situation and to collect the data and to harvest the data from the sector. I think, EWC collects some data, but we don't have a comprehensive picture. And I think for me, the key clue, if you like, in all of this is the slide that Robin presented about the proportion of black staff in schools in Wales. Now, I don't think we've got any reason to believe that our sector is wildly different to the school sector in Wales. And so just to emphasize, Robin showed in that slide that currently we're looking at 7 head teachers who are black and 15 senior leaders in our schools. Now, this is purely anecdotal, but from what I know of my colleagues' senior leadership teams across Wales in the colleges, I don't believe that our data is going to be wildly different. But I think the key point is, to pick up what we have put in our shared priorities, is we've got to collect and collate this data, and we've got to do it on a disciplined and methodical and routine basis, because that's the only way in which we'll be able to monitor progress over time. So I do think data is key.
And that data, obviously, Guy, I think you're right, has to be across all staff groups across EWC only captures for us registrant data as well. And yeah, I can really see that that's a piece of work that we need to look at much more closely, irrespective of where we are, not just in the FE sector, but as Robin has pointed out, across education as a whole. And I would definitely echo, Guy, that perhaps we need to think about that in the context of HE as well, given we're going into the post-compulsory education and training landscape with the imminent, obviously, or the recent introduction, I should say, of the bill to propose the Commission on Tertiary Education and Research. Now, the observant amongst you will notice that the Minister has joined us. Bore da chi Gwlidog, welcome to this webinar. It's great to have you. Diolch yn fawr, diolch yn fawr. Now, mae'n bleser I gyflwyno Jane Hutt I ymateb ar ran y Llywodraeth. I feel that in many ways Jane doesn't need much introduction, but it would be remiss of me not to introduce her formally as the Minister for Social Justice within the Welsh Government. Croeso chi a galon, Jane, i'r cyfeiriad. We're looking forward to hear from you now. Thanks so much.
Right, well, really pleased to be with you, bore da bawb. Mae'n braf iawn bod yma efo chi heddiw. It's a great opportunity to speak with you at this really timely and important event, and I was glad I was just being able to see those shared priorities, which are so important. But I'm only going to speak for a few minutes because I want to make sure there's enough time for the questions and discussions. So I'm just going to give you an update on the Race Equality Action Plan and say a bit about our wider work on social justice. So, as you know, our programme for government makes a commitment to make Wales an anti-racist country, and this goes far beyond being non-racist. It means being prepared to stand up and be counted and actively challenge discrimination in all its forms, and being prepared to have tough conversations about structural inequalities. You'll be aware, of course, the new cooperation agreement between Labour and Plaid Cymru reinforces this commitment, and it emphasises the importance of working with partners to tackle systemic racism. So today's event shows that you all share this commitment. So as I said, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to speak to you and hear from you the views on the actions most likely to have an impact in the further education sector. So you'll be aware of our recent consultation on a race equality action plan for Wales, and I want to thank ColegauCymru for putting together such a really detailed, constructive response, which does give us a lot to work with. And you've argued for a more joined up approach across education. I completely agree that that's what's needed. And officials, of course, are working together to make sure we have exactly that. The work is too important to be tied into traditional structures and silos. We all need to learn from each other and to have a genuine open dialogue about how we can work together towards our shared goals. And that is true in terms of the approach we're taking in Welsh Government. So clearly this is a cross-government, whole government commitment to the Race Equality Action Plan. And as we were devising it, co-constructing it, I was having bilaterals with all ministers in the Welsh Government so that they could help be informed by the mentors that came in from the community and from specialist fields to work with our officials across the government to get this right. But the consultation was very important, and we had 300 responses. So there's a lot to take on board. It was also good that we had responses in all sorts of formats and ways, texts, films, conversations that were recorded through when we reached out to communities as well. So Race Equality First is the organisation that's been commissioned to put together a formal analysis of the response. I'm just going to give you a sense of the overall feedback we've had and how we plan to use it. So the overwhelming sense from the responses is that while the plan is aiming to be comprehensive, we do need to streamline it. The advice from our expert group is that having too many priorities, it can be a barrier to achieving anything. So the main focus at the moment is identifying a small number of key actions that will really make a difference. So you can expect to see a sharper focus in the final plan when we publish it in the new year. Another strong theme coming from the response is that we need to put more emphasis on the benefits of achieving an anti-racist Wales, and not just for minority ethnic groups, but for everyone. And I mean, this is so important because it's really about shaping the type of society we all want to live in, and that as that's something everyone should be concerned with, but also that everyone will benefit from. And you know, that's come through very clearly from the sort of all Wales engagement at every level and every sector. In education, we've picked up a lot of feedback about support for staff, and this includes a whole range of areas: representation of minority ethnic groups in the workforce, but also helping to equip all staff with the skills and confidence to challenge discrimination, to engage with issues around racism and ethnicity, and to develop curriculum content that addresses systemic inequalities. And this is an area where clearly we need to look at the whole education workforce so that we can share support experiences and resources. And finally, a key area that I know you're interested in is the collection and use of data. And this came up so many times throughout the consultation. And there's a real collective will to try to get better, more joined up and meaningful information, both on numbers and on people's lived experiences. We've got some really good opportunities to use our existing education data, including to look at learners' progression and outcomes throughout their education careers. And I'd welcome your views on how we could do this better. We are really clear that we can't do this alone. We need you, our partners, to work with us to make the plan a reality. The ethos of further education is all about making sure that everyone has the opportunity to succeed and to flourish. As a great supporter of further education from my time back from being education minister, and as a Senate member in my constituency, it just is so important that that you've got such a key role to play, and of course there are those close links in terms of progression into higher education as well. So it's good that a conversation has started about the Black FE leadership group that can help us establish how we achieve this anti-racist culture across the FE sector. So we're really grateful for your wholehearted support. So I just want to say a few words about social justice and what that means for the FE sector. As I've said, colleges are at the heart of their communities, and they can play such an invaluable role in tackling inequality and disadvantage of every kind. So that's why this portfolio, the social justice portfolio, is such an opportunity and gift, because it brings everything together, and very much focusing on what your role and what the influences and the engagements you can have with your learners. I mean, just mentioning a few policy areas that we're working in my portfolio that we're working on, and you're engaged in your work on period dignity, also with care leavers, safeguarding, additional learning needs, active well-being, all key to delivering all of these essential policies in tackling inequality and disadvantage. You have such a dedicated staff work team who will be able to bring this together, streamline it, and ensure that we're making the right connections in every way. And I think this is about the everyday support that you can give to your learners, who often have complex barriers to educational success. And in, of course, recent times, the circumstances have been even more challenging. You're at the front line, and the COVID pandemic has only deepened the inequalities that already existed, as we all know. But we've committed ourselves to a fairer as well as greener recovery. But of course, we do have a unique chance to shine a light on these issues and problems and challenges, and to talk properly about the society we want to live in. Narrowing the gap for disadvantaged learners is our #1 priority as we look to recover from the pandemic. And your sector is innovative, and I know you'll continue to bring forward your ideas to help fight inequalities in our systems. So it's just really for me to encourage you to collaborate even more within the FE sector and beyond it to tackle shared challenges. And there's many intersectional inequalities policy arenas as well that we're engaged in together. More work, for example, as we finalise our LGBTQ+ action plan. We'll also be exploring students' experiences of sexual harassment, so that every college and university can be a safe place where discrimination is not tolerated. And I want to emphasise the importance of the FE sector engaging with us to meet our ambitions for social partnership and fair work. Social partnership is a means to strengthen the voices of both employers and the workforce, with an ultimate aim of improving the well-being of the people of Wales. We already enjoy that social partnership approach in Wales, and with our Shadow Social Partnership Council, bringing our social partners together, and who also very important during the pandemic in terms of how we engage and consult and listen to experiences and the challenges that all our sectors and partners are facing. Again, back to how we can work together to shape the kind of Wales we want to live in. We are going to have a new Social Partnership Council. We've been in shadow, with the FE sector invited to nominate a representative. So I do look forward to the full and active engagement of our FE partners in this work over the coming months and years. The Shadow Social Partnership Council is chaired by our First Minister, of course, Mark Drakeford, and Hannah Blythen, my Deputy Minister, is taking forward the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Bill through the Senedd. So our programme for government has equality at its heart. And, today is a really important opportunity to bring together the focus, the commitment that you've already made, the commitment, the statement that you've given us, and just picking up on that from Guy, and also very interesting to to hear from Robin as well. And the there's so much that we can do, and I see, Stella, we've got a good panel there, so I'm sure that there's some questions and answers to take us forward. Diolch yn fawr I chi gyd.
Well, diolch yn fawr, Gweinidog. As ever, Minister, thanks ever so much for your contribution, for reminding us of the importance of collaboration. That's a key tenet of all what we do, obviously, in Wales, and obviously a key proposition now emerging from the Welsh Government in its agreement with Plaid Cymru. We'll see, collaboration is key in all that we have to do in Wales. Thank you for setting us, if you like, in context as well, and being able to understand how we are trying to address a range of challenges in Wales, but also for reminding us as the FE sector, or the post-16 or post-compulsory sector, perhaps as we would now refer to ourselves, reminding us of the challenges that we face as well, that we should never rest on our laurels, and that we shouldn't be complacent. We need to be able to accept the challenge that government, stakeholders, and of course, above all, our students and learners present to us on a daily basis. So thank you for putting that into context. It's great to welcome Stella to the panel as well, and I'm really looking forward now to a conversation. We have quite a bit of time actually to be able to go to questions. Felly, please sicrhewch bod y cwestiynau hynny yn dod I mewn ar y function chat neu ar y function Q&A sydd gyda ni ar y Zoom. Mae'n groes I chi wneud unrhyw ffordd. Please make sure that those questions do come in, and obviously they can come in English or Welsh. But I do have one question that's actually come from Rachel Bowen, our Director of Policy. It's always good when your Director of Policy lobs in difficult questions at the very beginning of a Q&A. So I can take no responsibility, Robin, Stella, Minister, and Guy, for the hard questions of my staff. In fact, I do welcome them. The question which Rachel has put to us is, what is the first thing that needs to happen? Guy, what is the first thing as a college principal that you now need to do in terms of addressing this, not only the anti-racist agenda, but in particular an anti-racist agenda that sits within the commitment to a socially just Wales? What's the first thing on your to-do list following this seminar?
I think that's a really interesting question, actually, Iestyn, and it's a question which I've talked to colleagues, including Robin and Stella, about at some length. So if you're asking me the question as an individual principal, I would say that the first thing you have to do is you have to make a commitment. And the first step is that you have to understand all of this information. You have to understand the sort of information that Robin has presented in that presentation. And then you have to make a commitment. And that's something that personally I've been very proud to do on behalf of my own institution. And Coleg Gwent has committed to affiliation with BFELG. And the first big step is we have to work with our colleagues in BFELG on looking at that 10-point plan that they have devised and looking on the way in which we can absolutely systematically apply that plan to our own institution. It's really the point where I think for many senior leaders in education, you have to arrive at an understanding that it's not enough to be just feeling comfortable in your own attitudes towards not wanting to be racist. You have to move beyond a passive stance, and you have to move into a proactive stance of saying, as a senior leader in education, my personal approach and my institution's approach is going to be anti-racist. And that's, for me, the big step that senior leaders and colleagues in the sector have to make. I don't know if Stella is my key link at BFELG for my college affiliation. I don't know if Stella wants to add anything to that.
Thanks, Guy. It's been great working with you, and our initial discussions have really highlighted your commitment and to the anti-racist agenda, and your commitment to working with the BFELG on this important agenda. I would like to say that it's really, I feel really jealous in the right kind of way. I think about the approach being adopted by the Welsh government, the commitment, the absolute commitment to become an anti-racist nation by 2030. And I'm also jealous about the way that yourselves, ColegauCymru, and the educationalists and the FE system are working closely with government. I think it's something that we would like to see across the United Kingdom. I think following on from the commitment, I think the first step would be the data, and I think you've all acknowledged that data is critical. And it's almost like a this afternoon kind of thing. What should we do? What are the structures? How can you've said it all and you're committed? But I would say that beyond the data, it's not a question of agonizing over the data. It's only for the baseline, as you say. It's not something that it does. You can have gaps, but so long as there's a systematic method and methodology for collection, it's the action ensuing from that. And I think also it's about, I do want to highlight, because you said it in our conversations, Guy, about securing the commitment of the boards, of your board. And I think it's, this commitment from college boards and looking at representation. I can see somebody's asked that question in the chat. It's so critical. And I know that within your college, Guy, you have secured this and you're working your way through producing an action plan. So board representation and board commitment as well to the agenda, absolutely critical, and not just within the colleges, but across the system, the FE system, wherever it is that there's a council or there's a board, to secure that commitment as well. And then you'll have the layers. You've got government, you've got boards, you've got leaders, and then just everyone joining. And for me, that action plan that you've produced, certainly the consultation, I would gladly identify as Welsh any day.
Thank you, Stella. A glowing endorsement there, Minister, for all things Wales and progressive and anti-racist and socially just. But I think the question we've had there, Minister, in the chat, and Stella's alluded to, raises the wider question about how do we diversify the range of voices we have at a governance level, and clearly not just in the governance of FE, but in civic engagement and governance more widely. Within the Race Equality Action Plan, what kind of actions can we anticipate to see around engaging with the wider civic society and engaging more diverse and different voices at all levels of government? Indeed, of course, even including around, if you like, the cabinet table. How are we looking to engage that level of society across Wales?
Well, thank you very much, Diolch yn fawr, Estyn, and also very pleased to hear from Stella that she'd like to come to Wales, be in Wales. It's but I mean that the serious point is that we're not yet an anti-racist country. We cannot be complacent. We have got to we aspire to be a nation of sanctuary. I mean, I'm responsible for refugees and asylum seekers as well. And I mean, the ways in which FE has engaged and empowered our refugees and asylum seekers hasn't been mentioned this morning. It's been absolutely fantastic. I know, that Coleg Gwent, but also Cardiff and Vale College, all of the FE colleges, particularly where in dispersal areas, North Wales as well. It's just fantastic. But so I just wanted to mention that because I didn't mention it in my opening remarks. So one of the things that we feel that we've got to run, the way people who run Wales should reflect Wales. That's our big ambition. So we're not anyway there yet. Political parties aren't there in terms of representation in a local government in the Senedd. No, we're way off yet. But also we have got a diversity inclusion public appointment strategy where we are trying to drive that change in terms of diversity. The very interesting project, which we're partly supporting, but also with National Lottery funding to mentor. It's actually includes Race Council Cymru and Disability Wales and Stonewall Cymru as well. We're trying to ensure that we enable people to empower them on the route to power, to having influence in powerful places. I think you may be aware that we did, as I mentioned, co-construct by bringing community mentors in, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic community mentors into the civil service to influence our officials, to help them devise their action plans in each department of the Welsh Government. That was quite revolutionary in ways. So people were coming in who, to work with high levels senior officials. And I think colleges could think about doing that kind of work as well. We also gave grants to communities who've never been involved in responding to consultations all over Wales to say, look, have an event, look at the plan. So engaging people in policy making has been part of the route to this, and we will need. The steering group for the Race Equality Action Plan has been co-chaired by the Permanent Secretary and Professor Emmanuel Ogbonna from Cardiff Business School. I mean, that's never happened before, and that's kind of a steering group to take us forward. But I think if I could just say, in terms of Stella's point on data, one of our first recommendations was that we should have a race disparity unit. But we're doing this as part of an equalities data information and data unit, which we've agreed to in the Cabinet in the Welsh Government, because we do need to. We also have problems in terms of access to data which is held in the reserved areas of policy, like the Ministry of Justice, for example, in terms of criminal justice. So we're pressing hard with the UK government on disaggregated data for Wales, but I think that we can do what we can do with our data. We've got to use that. But leadership is key, and so Guy, it's so important because you will, I'm sure it'll roll through Wales with the FE sector, with ColegauCymru's commitment today, but still people will need, and leaders will need, to have mentors and guides along the way. Diversity of boards can't be achieved overnight. It's a long haul and a lot of work and commitment to be done. But I think it goes back to the fact that, I think so fortunate that there is BFELG to help Wales move forward. We need you to help us move forward. And I know the Minister for Education and Welsh Language, Jeremy Miles, will be very interested in the outcomes of this meeting today. So it's going to, we'll get things wrong. We'll get, we've had huge challenges, and I'm under scrutiny, and that's absolutely right. It is about the implementation gap, and that's where government's always been. They could have very good, and you might think this all sounds good, but are we going to be held to account to implement this? And I know we will be, and that's what I want, really. But we need to have your kind of guidance and the leadership from all those here today who want to make a difference. And I mean, I think there's also a great. I can see some of the interesting points coming up in the chat as well. We had that very important curriculum for schools. Schools are important in the route through the curriculum review by Professor Charlotte Williams, which is going to have an impact on our curriculum. But she did a lot of work on the fact that the absolute paucity of Black teachers at all in Wales, let alone through the sectors. We've got to address it at every level, and interesting that there's also just wanted to, I'm sure Justin knows that there's but there's very many Black, Asian, minority ethnic learners of Welsh through schools, FE in the community, including many of our refugees who come to live in Wales are also speaking Welsh, let alone learning Welsh. But we do need more Black people in management roles. It's going to be a commitment that everyone's got to make.
Thank you, Minister. If I may then, I'm going to go to Robin next. This question of the Welsh language as a barrier or as a facilitator of diversity, helping us to understand our own richness as a culture and as a nation. Do you think that there's a possibility that the language could be a barrier to Black and minority ethnic leaders, lecturers, tutors, students, learners in Wales? Or do you see it as potentially something that can open up routes into a more diverse and richer learning experience and leadership culture, Robin? And if I can ask you to put your mic on, that's great.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I mean, I think it's about incentives, isn't it? What incentive do you have as an individual? I think it is potentially a barrier in the first instance, and this is. I mean, I was reflecting on the title of this discussion: "Culture Drives Change." It's the culture that makes the difference. If people know there's a welcoming culture, if they know that their difference is valued and it isn't a source of risk to them, then they will engage with that society. As Stella says, we've often had internal discussions about what a wonderful place it would be for us if we'd been able to have our FE careers in an environment which is so conducive to partnership, because there seems, we're not a political organisation, but there seems to be almost an antagonistic relationship in the English environment, whereas in Wales, in recent years at least, there seems to be a recognition that FE is important, and it should be properly funded and should be part of the discussion and not a hit over the head by Ofsted or its equivalent. So I think if I were to move, my younger self had moved to Wales in this environment, I would have wanted to express my gratitude and engagement with the country by giving it the respect of learning the language. And I think that's what people would do. If they were respected, they would want to reciprocate.
I think that's a very, very important point there, Robin. It's about relationship, isn't it? Seeing the common, seeing the difference in each other, understanding how that strengthens our relationships. It clearly, for every Welsh learner, there's a very clear and obvious support that Welsh language, gives us. I keep reminding Guy of his need to deepen and improve his Welsh language, albeit with a slightly Brighton South Coast accent. It's all speakers of the Welsh language are welcome, and indeed someone who came from an English-speaking home himself. I have a tremendous debt to the Welsh medium education and an education system. I think the very, very beginning, but its inception, was more aware of diversity and difference and how to create a richer learning environment than simply a single language one. So I think if we can find a way to address a number of issues simultaneously, then obviously that adds strength. But at the same time, we do need to be mindful of things that we often put forward as positives can sometimes be barriers, and it's just about being aware of the potential barriers as well as the potential supports that I think that the Welsh language can do. Certainly from ColegauCymru's point of view, working with a colleague like Kenneth Latham, we're keen to see all staff, all leaders, all governors, you name it, working in colleges to be able to avail themselves of the Welsh language and to use it positively in their working environment, but also more importantly in their personal lives as well, irrespective of their background, irrespective of their perception of their identity themselves. So, opportunity for the Welsh language, and I'm going to ask Guy a question, particularly about the FE curriculum, Guy, if I may. We often talk about particularly the liberal and humanities and arts side of our curriculum as needing to be reviewed and refocused, and we've certainly seen that in the general education curriculum work. Is there a need actually to look at some of the ways in which we teach our vocational subjects, particularly, areas like hair and beauty, for instance, areas where we are thinking, if you like, of our clients potentially in a particular very sort of monochromatic way and not actually understanding their diversity? Do we need, for instance, to encourage more women into the traditional technical trades, for instance? And how do we go about doing that, breaking down those barriers within the vocational curriculum? Is it a challenge, and is it something that needs to be done, do you think?
Yeah, it is a challenge, Justin. I think we've got to look for ways in which we can support colleagues to reflect upon their own teaching practice, to think about how they approach their discipline, whether that's a vocational discipline like hairdressing or catering, or indeed whether it's like an academic discipline. Because there will always be, if you like, a formal defined curriculum, which is, in essence, is going to be content defined by qualifications. Now, okay, we don't have the immediate ability to change that. We can try at a sector level to influence qualifications over time, but the most immediate impact is actually those things which the class teacher can immediately impact with. And that is about choosing case studies and role models that you are applying, particularly the vocational curriculum to. I think, I'm aware of, within the wider FE sector in the UK, some really interesting examples of the way in areas such as hairdressing, in areas such as catering, the curriculum has been specifically used to highlight the lived experience of Black people and the fact that, that is an important part of our society. So I think we have got a journey there. And I think that comes back to understanding that we've got to make a curriculum that reflects current British values that are relevant to all people within society. And so I think within the Welsh context, I think I'm sort of quietly optimistic that we can do that. We can use our networks and we can use our organisations to share practice and to share good practice and to develop practice. And I think that's something that will be a journey which the FE workforce will be willing to make. But I think, going back to a comment that the Minister made about the government's action plan, one of the things the Minister said was that a key point is providing support to staff to challenge racism, but also to reflect upon curriculum and reflect upon their own practice, because we have to develop content that's relevant to people who live in Wales today. And the Minister's comment about the people who run Wales should look like the people who live in Wales. Well, actually, the same could be said for the curriculum for Wales. The curriculum for Wales needs to reflect the people who live in Wales.
Stella or Robbins, I think you'd like to add about this, if you like, diversifying, enriching the FE, particularly the vocational curriculum.
Yeah,
thank you.
I just come in? Oh, sorry, after you, Stella.
Okay, thank you. I did want to talk about the curricula. In our 10-point plan, you will see that we've got that a radical review of curricula and qualifications. And I thought, Minister, you might be interested. I know that we are, as a BFELG, we work as critical friends. We're a small organisation. We started working with the Federation of Awarding Bodies around curriculum and particularly the vocational, technical, professional curriculum, because there tends to be a view that that it's around the softer side of curriculum qualifications that you can sort of add on diversity or anti-racism. But our premise is that we do need to look at the content and design an inclusive curriculum rather than an add-on, and with anti-racism at the heart. And Federation of Awarding Bodies come on board. We're doing work. We've started the conversations with City and Guilds. For example, actually, last week, I was with the City and Guilds and their product development people and their designers looking at inclusive design and really looking at how they are as a major awarding organization going forward and transforming. And it's not an easy, it's not a today thing, it's not a year, it's rolling out, but there's an absolute commitment. We talk about also with say beauty. I think Estin, you mentioned beauty, but we were also last week looking at major critical friend review of their approach to the technical content of beauty and hairdressing, and also with some research that we were doing with students within another college, where they're looking at actually how it is that the content, for example, I'll just say very, very quickly that they look at skin, for example, and look at oily skin, normal and dry, without looking at the skin from the viewpoint of whether it is Indian or African and so on, and looking from there into products. So they're going right back to basics, which also mirrors, you may have heard, the work done by the university, one of the universities around transforming medical practice and the way students are taught, have been taught for decades that identifying, say, what's called blue, using blue as a way of diagnosing certain conditions, when that is not the way Black people would present in those sorts. So there is that wider curriculum content, and if I may say that we have been also championed by Professor Charlotte Williams, and we see that the work that has been done, and she absolutely is an ally of ours, and she sees that we would like to see that sort of a framework, and the work done by Professor Charlotte Williams for the secondary really supported and transferred in terms of an approach to vocational technical professional qualifications.
Robin, perhaps to sum up on this issue of FE vocational curriculum, any final thoughts before we come to an end very quickly?
I was privileged to be involved in training on the 10-point plan diagnostic toolkit yesterday at York College, and this very debate came up about how hair and beauty trainees can be given practical exposure to different hair types and skin types, and quite clearly there's a real thirst from the lecturers to give their learners full exposure. But it came to me that when we were talking, that the BFELG is an expanding network of colleges, all progressive thinkers in terms of developing a more inclusive curriculum, and it's clearly scope for us partnering within that group of colleges to give exposure to students in non-diverse areas and vice versa. So there are practical ways in which we can collaborate together to make it more practicable for institutions to give the full scope of vocational exposure. Just a quick point.
Well, thank you, Robin. And unfortunately, time is very quickly running out. We haven't run out of questions. Indeed, we haven't answered them all to the panel. But very, very quickly and briefly, what are the next steps, if you like, for ColegauCymru? Our focus with government will be on gathering data. We are hopefully just finalising our discussions around reviewing a code of governance so we can look at strengthening and diversifying governance. And we are in the process of just finalising our discussions with the National Academy of Education Leadership around strengthening leadership and diversifying leadership. So I think it was Joe from Group and I asked what the challenges are for us. The 10-point action plan is available from Robin and Stella, as indeed are the slides. So if you'd like to receive the slides and the data, please let us know. We'll put you in touch with Robin and the team. I orffen felly gael dweud diolch I bawb sydd wedi cyfrannu naill ar y panel neu yn y tîm I drefnu digwyddiad. So thank you from me to you all who have contributed in any way to this event. Please do keep in touch with ColegauCymru online via social media, or indeed, who knows, maybe sometimes soon we might even keep in touch in person. Diolch yn fawr o gael I chi gyd, ac yn wedi diolch yn fawr I Jane y Gwlidog. Diolch yn eto Gwlidog. Diolch yn fawr. Diolch yn fawr. Hwyl fawr pawb.
Bye.
Bye.